Well, I appreciate everybody being here, and these are unprecedented times, and times that are difficult for everyone. Our teams, our coaches, our administration, the media, the fans, we're all navigating this together. Many of you are probably going to ask some questions today that we won't know the answers to right now, but in the effort to be as open and transparent as we can, we'll try to answer your questions. I do have two key messages that I want to convey today. Number one is I'm heartbroken for our student athletes who, at no fault of their own, have seen the pursuit of their athletic goals interrupted in such an unexpected way. Number two, and much more important, we need to, and we have, put our competitive nature aside in the Southeastern Conference and come together to fight the spread of this virus. Our coaches and our athletes realize and have responded beautifully. If there's one thing that our volunteer spirit has prepared us for, it's to unite for the sake of the greater good. We have and will continue to have the effort to make efforts to address the coronavirus through a community lens. All of us must continue to do all that we can to reduce the risk of exposure and the spread of this awful virus. At the core of that is our responsibility as athletes, coaches, staff, university, our community, and our state, and our entire country depends on it. Our daily lives have never been interrupted in the way that we are currently experiencing, and it's not easy, and it will not get easier for some time. But it will pass, and it will make us stronger. I'm very appreciative of the leadership of our campus through Chancellor Plowman and President Boyd, and our state by Governor Lee, and the Southeastern Conference with Commissioner Sankey. My staff also and support groups have been incredible, communicating with coaches, players, housing, medical, mental health, peers, compliance, transportation, so on and so on. And it's been an outstanding job of communicating as needed. Our one goal and our only way that we can declare a victory is to avoid overwhelming our medical system, to save lives as we practice social distancing, save lives because we follow guidelines and instructions, and prevent overwhelming spread of the coronavirus.
As we transition into questions, I'm going to bring in Deputy AD Reed Sigmund and Senior Associate AD for Regulatory Affairs, Andrew Donovan. We're not going to pass mics, so if you have a question, get my attention, and I will call on you one by one. Trey?
Has the university set up any kind of situation where when student athletes, the ones that will return this weekend after spring break, have they set up anything with any kind of local hospitals or anything to test student athletes that have potentially been out of the country on spring breaks or anywhere heavily populated?
Our medical professions athletically are setting up a protocol as we speak to test our young people when they come here. Obviously, that is not the coronavirus test, but it's a protocol that would indicate a fever, indicate any sickness. At that point, they would be quarantined and followed closely.
David? Do you know of any athletes within the athletic department that have been tested or have been quarantined?
We have had no positive tests here.
Brett?
Coach, two questions. One, you mentioned how the student athletes have responded. What have your conversations with them been like? And two, I think all student athletes are scheduled to come back this weekend. How will the protocol work with that? Are all allowed to come back? If they come back, are they to gather their things and some of them to go home? How do you guys determine what the student athletes like on campus is like next week?
Yeah. Well, the first part of your question, yes, I have talked to a good number of our athletes, You know, a lot of the football players were in spring practice. The basketball team was participating in Nashville, so I got to be around them just after all the news, you know, kind of broke. Everybody understands. The more affected immediately, you know, were some of our spring sports that were actually in the championship places or really close to that. And Erica Brown, I had a chance to talk to. Darryl Sullivan had a chance to talk to, just to measure their, you know, their disappointment, but also on every one of the cases, they totally understand that the greater good here is that we stop or slow this virus down.
How do you determine what student athletes can stay?
We're encouraging all of our student athletes to stay at home if they can. There are international students here on campus that's not feasible necessarily. There are athletes and non-athletes on this campus that might not have the best place to go home to. They're welcome here. We will support them from a medical standpoint, from a nutrition standpoint, you know, from a mental health standpoint, any way that we can. We will not be participating in practices, lifting, workouts, anything that gathers our athletes or our coaches together.
Rhiannon and David?
In terms of you or even just other ADs within the conference, in terms of the eligibility and the waivers, has that been discussed in depth, or has there been too much other stuff?
It is. That's a process. That's going to take a while for everybody to figure out where we are with that, but it's definitely been discussed eligibility-wise, and then, you know, return of eligibility, that gets into to the NCAA. That has started a discussion as well. We don't want to get into that as much as we want to make sure our focus continues on the day-to-day concentration of not collecting and being together and spreading the virus.
Are you, I guess, same question now? Yeah. How would you describe what you guys expect the financial impact of the university to be?
There will definitely be some impact as you look at canceling a tournament, as you look at the SEC tournament and the NCAA tournament. Reed can speak to that, but there's still lots to find out yet.
It's really what Phillip said. We're going through the process right now to determine where we think we'll be. There's still some variables out there, but we're in that process of assessing right now.
Brent and Rhiannon?
Coach, as for academics for your student athletes, obviously the Ford Center and academic support are a huge part of, you know, college athletics. Have your coaches expressed concern to you? How has that been talked about with the NCAA about them not getting the type of academic support because they're not going to be able to be on campus?
Joe Scoggins and his staff are working on, you know, being able to, you know, through our computers and through our tutors and those kind of things, work with our all of our student athletes virtually. The ones that are here obviously will have direct connection with them. Certainly there's been conversation at the SEC level. I can't tell you at the NCAA level about all those kinds of things. Special needs students, you know, what does all that mean and how does it look? And at every turn, the student athlete has been put first in this.
Rhiannon?
On that vein, what facilities are open to the athletes? Are you having to kind of keep them away from gyms and workout facilities? Are they able to go in there?
No, our workout facilities will be closed. They're not. There'll be no supervision there. There'll be nobody using the facilities. Our academic, nutrition, medical, mental health, all are available.
Phillip, obviously with pro sports, there's a lot of employees, businesses that are connected to the games taking place. What can you say about everyone else being impacted by not having games at the venues, part-time employees?
Yeah, you know, it's difficult for our fans. It's difficult for our city. It's particularly difficult for those workers that depend on their livelihood here. Reed can speak to that. Again, that's an HR kind of thing. There's not going to be at this point anybody lose their job or anything like that at this point at all. We'll ask people to be here and work. If they can't be here, then there's opportunities, other ways for them to take leave and those kinds of things.
David and Wes.
Is that properly answered?
So Jeremy's not here today, but you got football's on spring break, of course. What do you expect? What does the football program look like while this is happening? You've got coaches that obviously are employed, the students are not here. What do you envision that sort of?
Well, I think it's really important, not just football, but for all of our coaches to stay engaged with their student athletes, to know where they are, what they're doing, how their grades are going. Obviously, we can check to the Thornton Center constantly the ones that are of need to be in touch with them. There's video conferencing that's out there that we all can do, with FaceTime and all those kinds of things. So you can visually get, and they should be working out. Our athletes should be working out somewhere, just not gathered in a gym, or a facility all together. Somebody was making kind of light of, what Herschel Walker did, as an athlete. He did push-ups and sit-ups and pull-ups and those kinds of things. And, you go out and, like we've all done, you run somewhere. It doesn't have to be a whole group of people running together.
Phillip, I know that you said this is sort of an unprecedented thing on this size and scope and scale and all that. As an administration, where do you even begin to kind of figure out how to tackle a problem like this logistically and realistically and not knowing so many factors?
I mean, it's really been one day and almost in some cases 1 hour at a time as it's continued to change. I mentioned our chancellor has been incredible. Randy Boyd has been incredible. Our governor has stepped up in a big way. Greg Sankey has been maneuvering from the NCAA and the presidents and chancellors to us, and all the best interest of the student athlete being absolutely at the top of all of this. The chancellor, student athlete, and athletes. She's got so many more people to manage through staff-wise and everything else. So it's been trying. Thank goodness for these guys and everybody working together and making it happen to this point as good as it can be, I think.
Mike, then Brent.
Obviously a very different situation, but you were the football coach here in 2001, the last time sports kind of stopped for a little while. What do you remember about that shutdown, and how emotional do you think it is when sports return after they've stopped for a little bit?
I hadn't even put those two together personally. That was so shocking and in the moment, and this has kind of been followed and coming, and some preparations and some discussion about it. I guess you could say they're similar, and there's deaths, there's families changed from those kinds of things, and as we did then, you do what you have to do, to get to the next place, and in the end, knowing that we will come out better and stronger. We're taught as athletes, as coaches or whatever, challenges are opportunities for you, and you fight through them together. And I mean, it was so pleasing to me to sit down with our head coaches a week ago or whenever it was, and hey guys, the season's over. There was some hope out there about a couple of the sports or whatever. They're essentially not there now, the hope. But everybody was on the same page. Everybody felt the greater good was more important. The chancellor said something a couple of days ago I thought was super important. She was talking to her son. You are isolating yourself and your friend so that your friend's grandfather can enjoy their grandchildren. This is all about somebody else. And I hope our millennials and I hope our young people will realize this is about somebody else, not just about them.
Coach, from that, this may be a compliance question. I don't know. A lot of
got him here.
student athletes may come back to town because they live off campus. They live in an apartment. From a nutrition and health standpoint, they depend on the meals here. Can you provide for them basically a takeout order? Can you service them from a nutrition standpoint, even though they're not living on your campus, but they're in Knoxville in their apartments as something they have a lease with?
Yes. Yes, we absolutely can do that, and will do that.
I think another aspect to consider of that are classes are still in session, so scholarships are still active. So our student athletes are still receiving their room and board. So they do have that access as well.
Brianna?
In going back to the football, when you were saying that coaches can stay in contact, has there been any clarity in terms of exactly how every SEC program can function? Can you do like virtual team meetings, or has that been detailed, or is it gone into that?
You should be one of our coaches. Is probably you know they've thought of that, and there can be virtual conversations with individual players. I don't think we've gotten into virtual team meetings at this point. But I will say this: the athletic directors under Sankey's leadership have been very clear, about what can and can't be done. As things arise, we will discuss them. We have a conference call every day at noon. And there's a good hour, sometime a little bit more, one time a little bit less, that we go through all those kinds of things. Where nobody wants, this shouldn't even be a conversation where you're trying to find an edge at this point, okay? But you do want them to be in shape. They need, all of them need to stay in shape. This too will pass, and we'll get back to some normalcy. And as if they're coached or tutored over a FaceTime or a whatever, then that's fine.
Trey?
When you guys were discussing athletic directors and the commissioner, were discussing potentially SEC baseball, softball going forward, and now the SEC baseball tournament's been canceled off, did that in any way come up to a vote between the athletic directors, or was that a direct statement from the commissioner that we are not doing this? Did you guys have any say?
No, I think we've discussed everything that's. There really hasn't. That's not a dictatorial kind of. He could be, but that's not his style, And he took into consideration, everything that he could. But it was following CDC and national standards and like we all do, follow the news daily, as to what's next, what can we do. That's the right thing, Not can we get a tournament in, necessarily, but is that the right thing for everybody concerned? And we're doing the best we know how.
David and Vince?
How you mentioned you've been parliamentary at the SEC. How would you assess how the NCAA has handled the last week or so?
Well, I'm kind of a party to that. I'm not actually, talking to the NCAA necessarily because it goes through their conference. I think there could be better communication from time to time. There's been some frustration, but that's true with our government. That's true with everybody. And of all of that I've said today, that'll probably be the headline, But in the big scale of things, I think we've gotten to the right place each time.
Vince?
I know it's a ways away, but have there been any discussions or preliminary sort of what-if planning for anything impacted during the football season, whether it's attendance with large crowds at Neyland or recruiting, anything like that? You've been discussed like that?
Well, recruiting was discussed because we came up with a measure of no in-person or off campus, but you can text and do it all. So everybody's dealing with this across the country. So I don't think any parents wants to send anybody to another campus somewhere right now. Everybody should be hunkered down, taking care of their family. So I don't think recruiting is an issue. Thus far, our season tickets are still selling, everybody's planning on the fall, and that's the way we'll go until and if that changes.
Wes?
Well, I know that you've already said this isn't a priority, and I think most people understand that, but also people are going to ask when it comes to the eligibility situation. I guess for some athletes that might be more pressing than others at this time. What's your stance on that? Do you think, or do you kind of have a fluid thought on that, or have you made a decision?
I would suspect, and that's all I can do at this particular time, from the conversations that I've heard, the SEC and more importantly the NCAA are going to be sensitive, to the eligibility of athletes, whether it's looking at giving them back eligibility, or whether they're trying to get eligible, or whether they're high school or trying to to come in. I would think work for the student athlete, and I think everybody will do all they can to help them be successful as they can. Now they're not going to cross any big caverns, but I think we'll do the right thing.
David? When you guys have talked in the SEC meetings, how much conversations have been about this possibly stretching into football in the fall, and what are those kind of early conversations?
It's not much right now because the length of this seems like it's going to be, whatever it is, 8 to 10 weeks, and hopefully that's the case. But certainly we'll continue to start peeking out there and see what that means as we go. But right now, our challenge is to make sure our students get back to campus, in our case, get back to campus if they're coming back or they've got a safe place to be, and that we can provide for them once they get here.
Yes.
You talked about the other year of eligibility and some details still being worked out for the spring athletes. Is the door closed on additional eligibility for the winter sports, do you think?
You probably know as much about that as I do right now, because on the big picture, that's down the road. There's a lot more immediate things right now.
So there's a committee called the Division I Council Coordination Committee that is looking into those issues now. It's made up of athletics directors, conference commissioners, student athletes are part of that committee as well. And so they're reviewing winter sport eligibility, spring sport eligibility, but understand that there are several other consequences that come with that. Financial aid implications, roster limitations. We obviously have a class of freshmen and transfers coming in to consider as well. So they're talking about that. They've told us they will work as quickly and as diligently as possible. And so we are standing ready to assist, but we don't have the answers as of this time.